Welcome to day 3 of our 12 days of Ec 10. Today we're going to focus on labor supply, which is one of the economic considerations that we modeled using our consumer choice model. And in particular, one of our strange conclusions is that it's possible the labor supply curve slopes up like we'd expect and then bends backwards, so that it's sloping down over some parts. And that would tell us that if you increase the wage, people would want to supply less labor, which is kind of odd, and it's a conclusion we could only derive by using our substitution effects and income effects, so it really hammers home why understanding those concepts are important, in addition to just the bigger picture about total effects. So a little bit of review. Our nominal wage, we normally denote by W, and it tells us how much we earn in dollars per hour. So if someone quotes you $10 per hour, $15 per hour, they're talking about a nominal wage. Nominal in the sense of, like, in name only, you get paid this much, but it tells you nothing about what you can really buy, what your your real purchasing power is. The economic concept for how much you can really buy is naturally the real wage. And basically what you do is you divide your nominal wage by the cost of goods, some price index. For us, that's going to be the price of all other goods. And when you do that, now you get a wage in goods per hour. So now if I told you the real wage and you divided my nominal wage of $20 per hour by a price of, say, $4 per good, I'd now know that I'm getting paid and I can buy 5 goods per hour worked. We defined leisure and don't really have a good symbol for it because L is used for labor, so we just use Z. And we defined it as any time not spent working. So even if you're at home, changing diapers for your newborn baby, that still counts as leisure. If you're sleeping, that counts as leisure. Anything that's not working for your wage is leisure. Anything besides labor. And then since all your time, 24 hours in a day, has to be used up, the sum of Z, leisure, and L for labor, like we used in Chapter 18, has to sum to 24. Don't forget that. This tells you that if you found out what happens for leisure, you know what's happening to labor. If you're doing more leisure, you're supplying less labor. If you're supplying more labor, you're doing less leisure. They have to go in opposite directions. So then we built a diagram for our budget set of what we can buy if we work. If we do no work whatsoever, do no labor, and spend all of our time on leisure, we can consume 24 hours of leisure, but we don't get paid anything, right? So we're just going to be here at this horizontal axis. Alternatively, we could work for 24 hours, and then we'd make a bunch of money. Suppose that our real wage is 10 goods per hour. I'll denote that G per hour. Then if we work for 24 hours, we would be able to buy 240 goods, but then we'd have no leisure. So, as always, probably not going to pick either of these 2 points. Nobody doesn't want to work at all, or doesn't even try, and nobody works 24 hours a day, unless they're on some kind of manic or psychotic episode. So now we connect the dots to get our budget set, and we can see that we have a choice between, there's basically a trade-off between all of the goods and leisure, and the trade-off, or the quantitative amount of the trade-off, the slope of this budget constraint, is W, the real wage. So in a way, we can think of the price of leisure as the nominal wage, and then the price of all other goods as P. So when we take the ratio PX over PY like normal, we get W over P, the real wage. And then we can imagine that, we don't do any math in this class, so we have no idea what this person's really going to pick. We would never give you a utility function, but suppose I told you that he picks this point A. Then you would know that the indifference curve needs to be tangent there to show that it's an optimum, and we'll say that he gets one unit of utility at point A. And then we can do a thought experiment. Suppose the wage increases. So now are we richer? Hopefully you can see that this is yes. We are richer. So we know that since both leisure and all other goods are normal, hopefully you remember that from section. Since we're richer and both goods are normal, we're going to have a positive income effect for both. And then we're going to have to think about what the substitution effect will be. We know that leisure has become relatively more expensive. We can see it on the diagram how this budget constraint now will have a steeper slope, because if the slope is the real wage and the real wage went up, the slope went up. So the substitution effect will be less leisure, and the substitution effect for all of the goods has to be the opposite. If leisure became relatively more expensive, all of the goods became relatively cheaper. So from our table that we do like normal, we can conclude that we're going to have more all of the goods. Whatever point is the new optimum, point B we'll call it, it will have more all of the goods. So it'll be higher up vertically. But it's ambiguous what's going to happen to leisure. And then we could add a third column about labor. Well, we know labor is just, as we said earlier, whatever's happening to your labor supply, your quantity of labor supplied, is going to be the opposite of the amount of leisure you demand. So this will be up, down, and then these are opposites, so this is ambiguous too. So we really don't know what's going to happen to the amount of labor you supply as the wage goes up, which is kind of odd, but it's a robust conclusion from this consumer choice model. When we look at these income and substitution effects and put them together, it really is ambiguous. So we have two ambiguities. Now, in practice, no one has ever observed the income effect here dominating substitution effect. So we told you earlier that labor supply slopes up. So as the wage goes up, people supply more labor. And that's because anywhere economists have ever looked, the substitution effect of the up arrow here has dominated the down arrow. So labor supply does increase with higher wages. But in principle, it doesn't have to. So we can look at the two cases graphically. So I want you to look at this and say, what is the total effect on leisure here? And then the implied, what is the total effect on labor? Just take like 20 seconds to look at points A and B. Make sure you can read this diagram and understand what's happening as you move from A to B. So hopefully you saw there's more leisure. So this is positive. The total effect is up, however you want to write it. And then since there's more leisure, there's got to be less labor. So when we move from A to B and we have that higher wage, as it's shown on the diagram, we move from BC1 to BC2. A lot of people I see label them like that. We're going to have less labor supplied despite the higher wage. Then we can look at case 2. So here we get a total effect for leisure and a total effect for labor. You can probably guess they're the opposite. Hopefully you can see it on the diagram too. When we move from A to B, we have less leisure. So that's more labor being supplied. So this is an up or a plus. This is a down or a minus. And so here we get the typical, kind of what we think of as normal, or the typical case where as you raise that wage, people are going to have a lot more consumption. They're going to have a lot more all of their goods because we move from here to here. But they have less leisure time because they're working more. So when we plot this as a labor supply, when we plot W against L, so here's wage and here's labor. Point A in the first case was, some amount of labor supplied for some wage. And then as the amount of labor, and then as the wage went up, we saw less labor being supplied. So point B was up and to the left. So now we can connect the dots. And we see that this labor supply curve slopes downward. This is bizarre, but you should understand why it's happening. It's because the income effect is dominating the substitution effect. The substitution effect says that, you get paid more, your real wage is higher, so you want to work more and do less leisure. That would tend to make you work more. But the income effect says, hey, I'm richer, I don't want to work all the time. I'm going to enjoy taking some time off, spend it with my family. And that effect is dominating, so you're going to work less overall. Case 2 is the normal case. It's the complete opposite. You get paid more, so you want to work more. This is what we think is typical. So now we had a capital supply model we also studied in class, and it's in chapter 22 in the book. It is literally completely identical to the labor supply model. You just change the name. So all of the goods becomes future consumption. Leisure becomes today's consumption. Labor is savings. So you don't actually plot savings just like you don't plot labor on the choice diagram. You just figure out what happens to today's consumption. And then, since you're splitting up today's income between consumption and savings, if you're consuming more, you're saving less. If you're consuming less, you're saving more. And the equivalent, the analog to our real wage, is 1 plus the interest rate. So as interest rates go up, that's equivalent to the real wage going up in the capital supply model. Thus, for the same reasons that you get an ambiguous effect on labor supply in this model, you'll get an ambiguous effect on savings. So this is the real heart of the model for both of them in our capital supply model. We can just diagram that up real quick just to give you a little extra practice. Suppose we started at point A with some interest rate, and then that interest rate increased, so we got a steeper slope, and we moved to point B. What's happening to our future consumption? Well, we can see from the diagram directly that the total effect is up. We know that future consumption is cheaper, right, because of this steeper slope. Basically, the intuition is if you're getting a lot of interest from saving and consuming in the future, then that's being incentivized. So you're going to have a positive substitution effect, and then you're richer, so the income effect is up. So that makes sense. We see total effect is up as expected. For consumption today, the income effect is also positive because both goods are normal. The substitution effect has to be negative. So we should see an ambiguity here, but we can see on the graph that the total effect was positive. So this is like case 1 that we did earlier. And you can see that the diagram, if you go back in the video and you compare this diagram to that diagram and this table of income and substitution effects to that one, this is identical to our case 1. You should be able to do case 2, the analog for capital supply compared to the labor supply we did earlier, so I will leave that for you. So in summary, we have an income effect. When the wage goes up, people are richer, they want to take more leisure. We have a substitution effect. When the wage goes up, people want to substitute in more work because it's paying better. The combined effect of this on leisure and thus on labor is ambiguous. It's possible labor supply slopes down because, now you have to fill this in, is it because the income effect dominates substitution effect or the other way around? I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. We'll just fill in the E's. So which is it? Good. Hopefully you said that it's the income effect dominates the substitution effect. If your labor supply is going down, it means that as your wage goes up, the income effect that makes you want to work less, spend time with your family, is bigger than the substitution effect of you want to work more because the wage is higher. So the net effect is, as the wage goes up, you supply less labor, which is completely odd. That's why I add in at the end. Probably not. No one's ever observed downward sloping labor supply. And that A makes it sound like dumb, why do we study this? But it actually shows you why it's important. If you didn't understand income and substitution effects, you would think that labor supply just slopes up. So as you raise the wage, you'd get more people wanting to work more hours. But now that we've studied this model, we know it's at least theoretically possible that if you raise the wage for your workers, they'd want to work less. They'd be like, we're rich. We're going to go take a bunch of vacation days and spend time with my wife in, Disney World. And if you're running a business, that'd be an important consideration to make. Similarly, if you're, a financial advisor, you want to work on Wall Street, you need to be aware of everything about capital supply and interest rates, including the possibility that as you raise interest rates and get people a better rate, that they're going to want to save even less, and maybe that'll mean less business for you since you manage their money. All right, thanks for watching day 3 of our 12 days of Ec 10. Keep the emails coming, keep working on those practice problems, the short answer, keep reviewing the end of chapter notes that Greg put in the book so generously for you. He's a professional, so those notes are good. You are not, so your notes probably not that good. So they're highly recommended. Thanks for watching.